Let's talk about the Ghoul, a new character added to the Fallout universe with the new highly acclaimed Amazon series, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park with this character. From what I can see, it looks like everybody loves him, so what I want to talk about in this video is why that is. I'm Lindsay, I love Fallout so much, it's kinda weird. And my videos on this channel are going to be for old fans and new fans alike. All of my videos are always going to be a spoiler minefield. I'm basically assuming you've seen every episode of the TV show, and maybe you haven't played all of the games, but you also don't mind getting spoilers from the games for whatever reason. Like maybe you've already played them, or maybe just realistically, you know, you're never going to play those games. No judgment. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, you're not a real fan. So if you watch the show and you love this character, maybe you're curious why all of the classic Fallout fans love him just as much. Especially because, let's face it, Fallout fans love to think things aren't good enough for Fallout. The other day I saw somebody said, nobody hates Fallout as much as Fallout fans. And that's true. Like when I saw all the praise for Walton Goggins, I wanted to hate it. A part of me really wanted to. But that's trauma, right? That's Maximus in Vault 4. Everybody's just too happy. There must be something wrong. But no, one of the reasons I'm making these videos is just how impressed I am with how much the producers of the show just had their finger on the pulse of what makes this franchise special, and the mentality of people who are drawn to it. All the main characters in Fallout represent certain archetypes. Lucy is the ingenue. She is brave naivete. What she lacks in insight, she makes up for with just a go-getter attitude. Maximus has a different kind of naivete, and that is a more of a traumatized naivete. I think he could be very much compared to like the Lost Tribe or the Lost Boys in Mad Max, where you have people that have had so much taken from them that literally anyone who will give them anything becomes their god. So while Lucy was exploited by being trained with a sense of unearned independence, Maximus was conditioned to feel more dependent than he actually is. So they're kind of polar opposites. Lucy needs to be knocked down a peg, and Maximus needs to stand up for himself. So if those two are already opposites, then where does the Ghoul fit in? The Ghoul is disconnected from systemic entanglements. Maximus and Lucy are in the process of trying to figure out their relationship to their systemic entanglements, and the Ghoul is like, nah, I'll pass. The Ghoul is a rebel without a cause because he sort of trauma divorced himself from his cause. And his journey of how he got to that point is a journey that Fallout fans are gonna really connect to. Fallout is all about contrasting old American ideals with the inevitable gross consequences of those ideals. Like right now in the real world, everyone's kind of going insane right now because of this clashing between this old 1950s expectation of what life could be like if we all just followed the rules. And now we're seeing all those rules aren't working out, and everybody's figuring out who to blame for that. You have people going, we could have that ideal if you would just, you know, stop being, I don't want to drop political topics. That's one of the great things about Fallout is that we can create this distance talking about these issues. I mean, Maximus says it straight up, theme stated. Everybody wants to save the world. Nobody can agree on how. Maximus and Lucy are still on this stage of, okay, come on, let's talk about it. Like, maybe we should figure out how. But the Ghoul is like, I felt that way 200 years ago. But then I figured out that we actually don't have control over how all of this is working. Somebody else does. And that's how a lot of people in the world feel right now. There's a nihilism that is rising in our culture that has a lot of people really concerned. And that nihilism, the root of it, is lack of trust in our fellow human beings. Why do we lack so much trust in our fellow human beings? Because reasons. So the real world that we live in now forces us to confront the contrast between what we thought life was going to be and what it really is. And Fallout creates this hilariously on-the-nose metaphor for exactly that. Let's see a wasteland where everyone's every man for himself, where we have to eat people, where it's completely screwed up. But then in the background have these themes and images of the old world. Nuka-Cola! Fallout thumbs up! Fallout is supposed to confront us with how full of shit our society is. So with the Ghoul, we have a guy, Cooper Howard, famous Hollywood gunslinger. There is no archetype that represents the misguided American fantasy quite like the cowboy, and this show just strips away every layer of that bullshit explicitly. One of my favorite things about Fallout is how unsubtle it is. If you're watching Fallout and you think, oh, is this a metaphor? Chances are the metaphor is way more on the nose than you even think that it could be. What do we think of when we think of the Western hero? I follow my own rules. I do what's right. America gives me the freedom to do what's right. The government doesn't get in my face and tell me what to do because I'm a cowboy and I'm a man. And for the record, with this tone that I'm using, I'm not making fun of people who are drawn to those ideas. I'm more making fun of how those ideas have been used against us, the way that they've been used against the Ghoul and those of us who relate to him. Because so many of us watch these movies with these lone wolf hero guys. It gives us hope that we're going to have power over our own destinies. That is the American dream. That's what it's supposed to be, is that you can do what you want. And what we're fighting to protect is your right to do what you want. Cooper Howard was in the military. He wore T-45 power armor. He's obviously a really good shot. He's seen some shit. And every step of the way, he never once felt like a puppet, because his actual, authentic, pure, true values as a human being were in alignment with the values that he was taught he was defending. Cooper Howard is a good dude. What I would say is so insidious, what sends a chill down my spine, and I think sends a chill down the spine of a lot of other people who love this franchise and love this character, is how his goodness was exploited. Like, I think that one of the most insidious phrases in the Declaration of Independence is, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is the original small white text. Because they can't promise you happiness. Obviously, nobody can promise you happiness. We know that's common sense, right? Like, pursuit of happiness sounds so reasonable. The government can't just hand us everything that we want. It's up to us to take the resources handed to us and carve out our own path. That's the American dream. That's the American idea. And that would be lovely if the pathway of pursuit of happiness was just as smooth for everybody, which we know it's not. Pursuit of happiness creates plausible deniability. The government can say, we never said we were going to give you anything other than that. Everybody's got to make the most of what they've been handed. So guys like Cooper Howard go out there and they march and they shoot and they kill for the right to pursue happiness, believing that the society they're doing that for is providing that path to the pursuit of happiness, with no frame of reference that the pursuit of happiness isn't actually possible for everyone in the system he's fighting for. And I think that what we all kind of need to see as a culture in the world right now is that fact, that these paths to the pursuit of happiness are different for different people. So when somebody who's experiencing a lot more hardships on that pursuit, to actually trust and stop and listen to those people, instead of just assuming they're lying. A true independent gunslinger, thinking for himself cowboy ideal cannot be a soldier. The ideas are not compatible. Are you following your own ideals, or are you following the ideals that were fed and taught to you by the system that meets your needs? Because this is what's actually happening most of the time. In fact, pretty much all the time. Cooper Howard didn't actually become the character that the system packaged him to be until he disengaged from that system. You're not a rebel without a cause if you're a rebel for America. In fact, if you're a rebel for America, you're not a rebel at all. The Ghoul is unfazed by oppressive societal structures. And this is a classic that audiences are returning to over and over and over again. My personal favorite would be the Punisher, specifically in the comic book Welcome Back Frank. There's a part in Welcome Back Frank where he punches a polar bear in the face, and it's one of my favorite comic book moments ever. And I thought of it so much in Fallout. When throwing the newborn into the incinerator, I was like, oh yeah, this show does not care about anybody's feelings. What a way to set the tone. Newborn puppy, straight to the incinerator. If you got a problem with it, don't watch Fallout. But yeah, characters like Walter White, movies like Falling Down, The Matrix is a big one for me, The Truman Show counts, Tyler Durden, Fight Club, Batman and the Joker, increasingly more so the Joker in recent years. And something that hurts me a lot personally, which I might eventually one day make a bigger video about, is there is an assumption when we're drawn to characters like this that there's like a fascist lone wolf, want to shoot up a school thing going on there. And don't get me wrong, sometimes there is. But I'll put it this way, not everybody has a communal mind. Like, yes, there's elements of trauma and lack of trust, but people who are more social and extroverted, more communal oriented, have absolutely off the charts cruel assumptions about those who aren't that way. And a lot of people who aren't that way play Fallout. Why? Because traditionally, these are single-player games. A lot of us have a lot of trouble interfacing with people socially and being in communities, and so we play these games, and that's how we experiment with moral moral choices. And whenever we come out of these caves and try to talk to other people, it goes really bad. And it's really, really, really hurtful when, you know, we're all victimized by the same social system. And because you see us as these lone wolf types, you get afraid and start blaming these problems on us when all of us should be looking at the Vault-Tecs of the world. Frankly, looking at the Amazons of the world. We'll do a video about that eventually. Those of us who are drawn to characters like that are often lumped together with being like incels, manosphere, you know, hating women is a big thing. I don't hate women. I love women. But there is a full-on scene that, like, we can't, like, the ghoul full-on ties up Lucy, uses her as bait to catch a gulper. When that doesn't work out, they have a big scuffle because, as she points out, she was not just about to let him use her as bait in the poison river. Ties her up like freaking full Black Snake moan. She bites off his finger in this act that's supposed to make us go, ha ha, girl's fighting back, she bit. So then he grabs her hand with a knife and like saws it off in the most brutal, bloody, I'm Fallout and I don't give a fuck about your feelings way ever, and looks at her with this complete conviction and says, that's the most honest exchange we've had so far. This scene is badass. This scene is not misogynistic. This scene, I'm sure people will interpret it that way. If you think the scene is misogynistic, you're not wrong. That's not a thing you can be wrong about. So if anybody says it is in the comments, if you were that person's wrong, you can't say that they're wrong, especially if they're a woman. Whether or not something is misogynistic is not an objective fact, it's a perspective. Interpretation and intent are two very different things, but they're both very, very real things, and we're just gonna have to live in a world that has both of them. So why don't I think that this scene is misogynistic? Because this isn't a male versus female scene. This is a privilege versus trauma scene. Other than just the basic fact of, like, where they fall into the great binary divide. There's just nothing gendered about this scene. It's just, I mean, maybe it's easy for me to see being a genderqueer person, but like, basically in my mind, if you want to see if something is sexist or not, just flip the genders in your head and see how the scene looks. And see how it changes the meaning of the scene. That will tell you more about the scene and more about yourself. Like, isn't it a thing that Twilight, because Twilight's a perfect example of this. Twilight, you gender flip Twilight, it's a big sexist mess. But apparently, she gender flipped it. Like, I heard she actually released a version of the book with the gender flipped. Is that true? Because I'm like, that means other people must have said what I was saying about that at the time. In my genderqueer brain, if the ghoul were a woman and the vault dweller were like an uppity boy, the scene would be the same for me. I'm really, really curious about your takes on that. Please tell me in the comments. I think that is an example in this universe at this time, especially in Fallout, because people who are watching the Fallout TV show, what you might not realize if you haven't played the games, is how not sexist the game is in a very specific way. Because Fallout has like the same lines of dialogue like that all these characters say, but you can play a male or a female character, they simply just didn't have the wiggle room to be that sexist. They have to treat the girl character like the guy character because they can't like re-record all that shit, you know? Like, it's actually a matter of practicality, which similarly is why me and other genderqueer people are like, we need to stop this gendered shit because it's fucking inefficient. It's like, if you are cisgender, that's a real thing. Yeah, if you are a guy who has a assigned male body and you are perfectly in alignment with the male social role, good for you. Like, we should make room for you too. Anybody in the left that's making you feel like cisgender men don't have a place are doing a bad job. Like, that's my opinion. I'm obviously very left. I mean, look at these flags. I hope by now you know that they aren't battle flags. But sawing off her finger was not about, I want to hurt women the way I've been hurt. Here's why it's about trauma versus privilege, okay? So, he is a ghoul. He's seen some shit. He's really roughed up. That's like what the whole ghoul metaphor is somebody who was just ravaged by the radiation in the wasteland, right? So because of that, his relationship to being harmed to, he's just gonna kind of be more chill about it. Like, for example, if you're dealing with like a crazy screaming word salad narcissist, I'm impervious to that kind of person. Like, that's my gift in this planet. Like, actually just recently a friend of mine had this crazy abusive narcissistic roommate. I have just experienced so much narcissistic abuse that I see all the tricks. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound like I'm such a badass, because, like, there's other situations where, like, oh my god, you should see me with a spider. Like, I am far more afraid of spiders than I am of narcissists. And that's how the Ghoul feels about, this violent world. He's been out here for a while. So having a finger cut off, for him, less of a big deal. But for her, and I love how they foreshadowed it with all 10 fingers. He grabs her, and they make it very, very clear in that scene. This is a much more shocking, disturbing, it's higher contrast with familiar experience for Lucy than it is for the Ghoul. And that is what he means when he says, this is the most honest exchange we've had so far. Because while it looks on the surface like she was hurting far more than he did, it's because he's hurt for 200 years. That is what we as traumatized people are trying to explain to people, especially neurodivergent traumatized people. Like, yeah, to you it looks like, we just can deal with it because we're such badasses. But it's because my mother didn't know how to show me love. And when she was more regulated, would write like detailed, very articulate essays in emails about what a horrible person I am. It takes a lot to overcome the definition of yourself that was given to you by your mother. I have another channel about trauma where I can talk about that if you're more curious. But the point is, that was an honest, even exchange of pain. Him cutting her finger off like that, even if that's not what it looked like. And people like me who relate to the Ghoul know that that's what the scene was talking about. The more important thing to think about is how some of us believe that our needs will be met if we put more faith in the system. Some of us believe that our needs will be met if we put less faith in the system. Cooper Howard is somebody who transitions from first believing that the system that he was upholding was the one that's going to uphold these individual cowboy values, but then throughout the experience of the story, he's learning more and more that freedom wasn't actually what the system was protecting. It was protecting an illusion of freedom that would make everybody feel free even though they weren't. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm really hoping. I hope that's where Fallout's going with this. I hope that what we see is Lucy and the Ghoul recognizing that they're both fighting the same system, and that's where it looks like it's going. So that about sums it up for me. That is why the Ghoul is so perfect for the Fallout franchise. He's a perfect cross-section of 50s values and modern disillusionment. Now, frankly, I could make dozens of videos about specific scenes, specific moments of the Ghoul in the show to break down these elements in more detail. But there's so many. I mean, pick one. Tell me in the comments which one. I think it would help me to hear what scenes you guys want to hear me talk about the most. So let me know in the comments how you feel about the Ghoul, obviously. Also, let me know how other characters in the show also make you think about real-life societal norms in the same way. Speaking of societal norms, oh man, I want to do a video about norms so bad. Oh man, I want to do a video about anything. I just have trouble narrowing it down. In the comments, what do you want me to talk about next? I'll talk about anything about cross-referencing this show with the games and reality. The only thing I'm less interested in is like, we are gonna do some lore-breaking videos. Who am I kidding? Obviously, remember to like and subscribe. You're a YouTube watcher, you know how much that helps us. But on a personal level, I just want you to share this video with your friends. I'm exploding with all these Fallout thoughts, and I just want people to see them. I'm really excited about where this goes. And I look forward to meeting all of you. Bye!
If you have to go out, take a gun and a lamp, 'cause everybody knows there's a devil in camp.